In terms of emerging threats to drinking water, we are still dealing with the problem that faced those Roman soldiers or London, which is increasing populations putting increasing pressure on water supplies. And we have drinking water plants that really were not designed to remove chemicals from drinking water. They were designed to remove microbes from drinking water. And so we don't really have a good system for getting those out. And that's why we find things like pharmaceuticals in our water supply, because the wastewater treatment systems are definitely not getting chemicals out. So all the chemicals all the drugs that are either dumped into toilets or are metabolized partially by humans and urinated out are winding up in our water supply. And most bodies of surface water in the United States have detectable levels of pharmaceuticals in them. The other threat we face is that our water supplies are a vulnerable target of terrorism. In 2002, there was a plot to put cyanide into the water supply of the U.S. Embassy in Rome. The Italian security people figured this out and managed to stop them, and these guys were sitting in a room with maps and barrels of cyanide, and these are all they had to get access to, is these water pipes that run under the streets of Rome. And there have been a number of reported plans interrupted for terrorist attacks on water systems worldwide: United States, France, Italy, South Africa, Philippines, Turkey, etc. And the U.S. National Intelligence Community assessment of the global water supply stated that these are going to be increasingly likely to be targets for attack in the future going forward. So we need to sort of rethink the way we deal with drinking water. Now, we talk about drinking water treatment plants and the water coming out of them, but less than 0.5% of the water that comes out of drinking water treatment plants is actually drunk. And so we, in essence, in the United States, we dumb down our drinking water standards because of this, because we have to treat 100 gallons of water for you to have your 2 liters of water. And we want a standard, we want to protect those 2 liters of water, but the cost of treating the 99.5 gallons of water to make that possible is prohibitive if we want to really have the kind of water quality that we should have in the United States. The water is going, it's lost out of pipes, it is used extensively for watering lawns, dishwashers, showers, clothes washers, and just this tiny slice up here is actually run out of the tap and consumed. Now, climate change is typically thought of as a problem of water affecting water quantity, but water quantity and water quality are completely linked for a couple of reasons. One, if you have a drought and water supplies are reduced, every time then you are concentrating contaminants in those water supplies. And if you have extreme storm activity, which is also associated with climate change, you're going to have combined sewer overflows, and the hundreds of billions of gallons of combined sewer overflows that run into surface water all around the United States every year increase. And those combined sewer overflows, remember Chadwick and hooking up the pipes, well, we're dealing with that problem all over the United States today, actually all over the world. This is Katrina. This is what that drinking water plant outside of New Orleans looked like after Katrina hit. They had to shut down the water supply. And so this is sort of one other way these water supplies are vulnerable. This is a group of books that I was asked to review recently. And the interesting thing about all these books is the word crisis is prominently featured in the title. And I have to say, when I see crisis that many times, there must be a problem. The crisis, a lot of people talk about the crisis of running out of water. And I think we have to look at that a little more carefully. I mean, this is the blue planet. There is no shortage of water, specifically. The problem is having the right amount of water of the right quality in the right place at the right time. And we have this astonishing hydrologic cycle that constantly purifies water and is the reason that we can continue to exist on the planet. And what we're talking about doing is replacing the hydrologic cycle with human systems like a desalination plant. It's estimated that every major city in Australia will require a desalination plant to be built in the next 10 to 20 years because of demands on water supply, and they just don't have any other place to go for more water. This is actually a desalination plant outside of London, where they have also have problems providing clean water to the city. And it's something that's being talked about all around the world, whether it's either desalination plants or plants to purify wastewater to the point where it's drinkable. The other way we're dealing with water and trying to, in essence, do what nature has done historically for us is to move water around. This is the most massive water redistribution project in human history. It's happening in China with a whole series of dams bringing water from southern China up to northern China, a little bit the way California brings water from the north to the south of California, but on a much grander scale. The problem with this is what we are trying to do is something that nature has done for us for a very long time. And nature, the bulk of the solar energy that hits the Earth is used to drive the hydrologic cycle. 48% of the sun's energy reaching the atmosphere gets through to the Earth's surface, and of that, and 25%, or more than half of this amount, is used for evaporation, another 5% for convection to move that is moving the water in the air around in the form of clouds. And the fact is, if you took all of the energy consumed by humans, all of the fossil fuels and all the nuclear energy, and you applied it to try to drive the world's hydrologic cycles, it wouldn't last for half a day. So we are taking on an epic task, and at some point, we're also going to run out of some of those fuels. So we should tread very lightly on the notion that we're going to just simply move in and take over from Mother Nature and replace the hydrologic cycle with human activity. Here is, part of the problem. We're going to run out of oil. We're going to run out of coal, and probably a good thing. Maybe we'll run out in time to slow down global warming. So what do we need to do to have sustainable, safe water? We have to have aggressive source water protection. We need to make massive investments in our infrastructure. It's going to take a radical re-examination of our systems for treating, distributing, and using water. That comes back to this notion that we're only using 0.5% of the water that's treated to drink. There are countries which actually have separate water supplies for drinking. The Royal Chemical Society of England has suggested as much, that England should be pursuing that, and Great Britain should pursue that. We should look at advanced treatment for treating the water that we drink, so that we can, because the methods we're using are not removing chemicals, and they're not removing, they're requiring high levels of chemicals like chlorine to disinfect. So advanced water treatment is essential if we want to have a safe water supply. And ultimately, it's going to take political will, because these are expensive changes, and they don't tend to be the top of the list kinds of topics. But I've only talked about the easy part. The hard part is the tragedy that's happening in the developing world, where some 2 billion people lack access to even simplified, simple improved latrine. About 1 billion people have no access to any type of improved drinking water source. And so you wind up with a picture like that. 1.6 million people worldwide die every year from diarrheal diseases, and about 90% of those who die are children under the age of 5. 160 million people die every year from schistosomiasis, 500 million, I'll give you the numbers here, 500 million at risk of trachoma, which causes blindness. Infections from parasites and infections from hepatitis are all related to contaminated water. This is a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions. Everything I just talked about pales in comparison to the challenges faced in the developing world. During the Rwandan wars, people fled Rwanda in huge numbers, and they fled across into Zaire, and they wound up in refugee camps that looked like this. So this is rocky soil. This is volcanic soil, and the rains would come down, and they'd wash across this volcanic soil down into a lake below the refugee camps where people would drink. And this set the stage for the worst cholera outbreak in human history. In a matter of about a week, 60,000 people died. I've talked to some of the people that were there, and these people were shaken for life by what they saw there. Not only that, but the workers in the refugee camps who were trying to help often had to face armed Tutsi rebels coming in and taking their water, their clean water that they were going to give to these people to save their lives.